Hello, Nattycasters. Today's guest is Joanie Schultz. If you read Joanie's bio, the first sentence is, I was raised by psychic hippies in Colorado and was taught that magic is real and that utopia is possible. For Joanie, that magic has manifested itself through theater, opera, teaching, and arts leadership. Her current role as Associate Artistic Director of the Cincinnati Playhouse in the Park has brought her to live in Cincinnati full-time. Ron Rex and I had a great conversation with Joanie about her fascinating life. Her bio ends with, I hope that people leave my productions with questions that stick with them. I hope they leave having discussions with other human beings and with themselves. I hope that they are inspired to think about or interact with the world a little bit differently. I hope they leave with hope. Now, here is our conversation with Joanie Schultz.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Nattycast. And now to your hosts, Tim Barker, Rex Stull, and Ron Thomas.
I want to lead off with, you just closed Birthday Candles Sunday, right?
On Sunday, yeah.
Yeah. And such a beautiful production. We can get into that. But like, how is it for you as a director when a show closes? Because I know as an actor, it's there's emotions. It's but like for you, have you already move on? Are you like what is your process when a show closes as a director?
Yeah, that's a really good question because in some ways, opening night is my closing, right? Because my job is over on opening night. And often, as I've spent most of my career as a freelance director, a lot of it on the road, and they basically kick you out the next day. They're like, your housing's over, get on a plane.
Right.
That's right.
And most of the time, I don't go back. It's seldom that I get to go back. And so it's a different thing to have a show close in the town where you're living. And I did really love this cast, and many of them were people I'd worked with before, and having them in town and having the show happening was really meaningful to me. I watched it about once a week, and I was really sad to see them go.
Yeah.
But that was more just on the personal level. And I do think as a director, it's nice to know my work is happening somewhere and that people are seeing it. I read the performance reports every night. The stage managers send out these long descriptions to the rest of us of exactly what happened in the show and how the audience reacted. A really good stage manager gives you a pretty good play-by-play.
All of my stage managers used to rat me out for all my sound mistakes because I ran sound, but that's a different story.
They also do rat people out.
Right.
You do. It is mostly to hear about the mistakes, but
Yes.
also you get like that
Some positive things.
some
come out,
positive
right?
things, and usually at some point there's somebody reaching out to you saying, "Oh, I saw the show and it meant something to me." And Birthday Candles was a particularly special show. I think it really moved people. And I think that there's something really meaningful in a group of artists making a piece like that we all really bonded. And I was sad to see them go. I was really sad to see
So
them
how
go.
involved are you in both the selection of the play, like at the Playhouse, or are you just brought in as the director at that point? Are you involved with the selection of what plays are going to be done? And then kind of as a follow-up to that would be also the casting.
So in 2021, I was hired to be Associate Artistic Director at the Playhouse. I moved here in the end of November and actually was on contract starting in September to help plan the season. So one of my duties, I run the artistic department. So one of my duties is to do a lot of the work in planning the season. I do it in collaboration, of course, with the producing artistic director, Blake Robison, and I also do it with our literary manager, Tatiana Godfrey, and we also have other people reading and talking and telling us things. But I have a very big hand in the choosing of the plays and the assembling of all the creative teams and the casting.
So like in the selection process, I mean, are you laying out 4 choices and picking one? Is it 40 and picking how does that work? How do you get from a list of possible things? And I'm sure it also goes into stacking the season, like what is the feel of this and that? Maybe just a little bit about that. I'm curious how it works.
Yeah, it's so complicated. It is so very complicated. There's a couple different ways that we look at it. We really want to make sure that we have what we call our tentpole plays. That we have a couple of those that hold up the rest of the season. And by that I mean they're plays that are pretty populous, that are going to bring people in, that we also really believe in. So we're scouting those. We're talking about the season from two seasons from now, right now too. We're talking about this on an ongoing basis and reading plays constantly. Our literary manager reads over 300 plays a year. That's her job. She sits and reads all these plays. She goes to new work festivals. I'm always out seeing things in other cities. We're constantly scouting what should we be doing, along with the new play commissions that we do. So we're developing work with writers. So there's just like a lot of different pipelines that are working towards coming into the Playhouse so that we have a lot to choose from. And there's always like an embarrassment of riches. There's so many good plays out there. Yeah. And we are programming 8 of them.
Right.
Every year. So we think about which ones are going to be the ones that are going to bring a lot of people in our doors, that I feel like we have a really good feel at the Playhouse for what the Cincinnati community is looking for and what they're responding to. And then we also try to think about how many different voices we have as far as representation from different communities, and what kind of plays, who's writing these plays and who are they about, and so just trying to make sure we have a lot of diversity, both in voice and storytelling and form and comedies and dramas, and because everybody wants something a little different. Mm-hmm. And we are like the flagship theater here, so our responsibility is to serve a lot of different populations, but also hopefully serve a lot of people who want to see it all, and they might not love everything, but they'll be like interested enough in it, and the work is good quality enough that they leave with something to talk about, even if it wasn't like their favorite piece of the year. So it is a lot of things. Ultimately, we then kind of know what some of the pieces are. We also do a lot of co-productions with other theaters of our size that are in other cities. Like we've been working a lot with Milwaukee Repertory Theater. And co-productions are really good for theaters like us because we share expenses.
Sure.
And especially with the state of the arts in the world right now, that's a really important, helpful thing, and allows us to do slightly bigger productions than we probably could otherwise. And
maybe also take a risk on the other side a little bit, right?
Right.
You have something you're sharing the cost on that you know are going to get the seats in filled, right? Bigger production, and then you can maybe have a couple that you're going to take a little bit of a risk on and both pushing yourselves, but also, push the audience.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of what it is. I mean, like you say, you walk in sometimes and it might not be for you.
Yeah.
I literally grew up on the corner of Parkside and Loudon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and my parents bought that building in '67, and there's a photo of them remodeling that building and like the Playhouse, the original one, being built.
Oh, wow.
So I grew up there. My parents were season ticket holders, and we would go as well. We would tag along as kids. A lot of times they would take us up to see things. But I vividly remember, and they went with another couple, and my parents were very into the arts, but they would come down, and one of the great things was them just talking about something that they saw. Yeah. And they'd be like, whatever, I didn't like that one. Oh, maybe this.
Yeah.
But just pushing them, because they walked in a lot of these things they walked into cold.
Right.
Yeah.
It's one thing if you walk into a known production and kind of know what you're going to get. Oh, that's a good version of it or a bad version of it. But some of the stuff was just totally new.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of a subscription audience. That audience that will take that risk and commit to the theater and say, like, I know a couple of these titles. I'm really excited about those, and I'm going to take my chance on the ones that are in between and show up and spend my evening and turn off my phone. I mean, especially these days, you know, I'm going to turn off my phone and I'm going to actually like sit in this dark room until you let me out and let you tell me a story. And I think that's a big ask these days. So I'm just so grateful that we have so many people willing to do that, because that is how we slip in like the lesser known plays. This year was such a great season. Birthday Candles closed our season, and we programmed this amazing play, Primary Trust, that I loved so much. And when we programmed it, we just knew that we loved it. And then it won the Pulitzer.
Yeah.
Oh,
and we
wow.
were like, hey,
Right.
we did
Look
that
at us.
right.
Yeah, we were ahead of our time.
Did Birthday Candles, was that on your radar that you brought, or did someone bring it to you, or the?
Yeah, that play had been sort of my baby for a while. When I was freelancing in 2019, I had left a job. I was in between things. I was directing a lot, but I was also reading plays for another theater. You know, you get like $50 a play, and you just have to write a little book report on it and say whether you think they should program it or not. And they gave me this play, and I just fell in love with it instantly, and I knew it was so special.
And you didn't send it back to them. You're like, I'm keeping this one for myself.
No, I was like, you guys should program this play. You have to do this play. You absolutely must do this play.
Did they?
They didn't, but they've had artistic turnover, and there was a pandemic, and you know, all those things. But they have not done the play. And so when I came to the Playhouse,
Because you said at the time, this thing's going to win the Pulitzer. No.
I mean, well, this didn't win the Pulitzer. It should.
Oh, okay. All right.
You know, I think it's an incredible play that moves audiences, and I also think pushes a little bit with theatrical form. I think it's a play that works in an unexpected way for a lot of people. It's a family story, and but it's the way it deals with time and the way the characters come in and out. It's very Thornton Wilder-esque in a way. You know, it really has echoes of our town in it.
I got to tell you this, Joanie. I saw it. My wife and I saw it on Broadway with Deborah Messing, and what I just loved so much about your production was the intimacy. I felt like you know, in that theater, and to circle back to Rex and sound, but the specificity. When those characters would go to exit through that door, that sound cue, I mean, I still get chills. That was so tight and impactful. And I don't know if you rehearsed that to the moon and back, but I mean, it was incredible. It was truly incredible. The year is 1985. Back to the Future is the highest-grossing film. Amadeus wins the Best Picture Oscar. And Madonna and Wham are duking it out. Not just on the charts, the NattyCast archives show that Crazy for You won out in 1985 for the SCPA prom theme. And you can relive all these memories and more at the 40th reunion on July 12th at the Hilton Cincinnati Netherland Plaza. As always, at SCPA, other classes are encouraged to join the celebration. As Madonna reminds us in Crazy for You, swaying room as the music starts, strangers making the most of the dark. At least for one more night on July 12th. Wait, one more night? We're mixing things up. That's a Phil Collins song? To get your tickets, visit scpaalumni.org. Look for the Get Involved tab along the top and click on Class Reunions. There you will find links to buy your tickets, book a hotel room, and an email address if you need more information. There will be name tags because 40 years is a long time, and in the 80s, we had to see each other through the smoky air. Okay, Matthew. I mean, who wrote this stuff? Well, I guess we'll sort this out in the edit. And now, back to the show.
Thank you. We actually really did. You know, it's funny that for those who haven't been in the Rosenthal Shelter House Theater at the Playhouse in the Park, you should come next year. It's a thrust theater, so there's audience on three sides, And it's the original shelter house. It was the original playhouse in the park.
I used to ride my bike around there as a kid when it was just a boarded up shelter house.
It's amazing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And they turned it into this theater. And there's this exit door on the side of the stage. It's a fire exit. It's always there. It's it has a light up exit sign over it, and you cannot turn that off.
Yeah.
It's just part of what you accept, and for most of our plays, it's just sitting there, and you kind of ignore it during the play. But I really wanted it to be the door that people used when they're passing on. You know, what the playwright Noah Heidel wrote was that character steps out of the play, and
You mean that's the description
that's
of
the
stage direction?
Yeah.
Wow.
And that could look like a lot of different things. I'm sure every production will do that differently. But I was like, well, we've got this door.
That's been driving me crazy for years. And
And I think what surprised everybody was how much I wanted to hear the crash bar.
Yeah.
So it was it's like an old school door with like a crash bar, and then when it closes, that you hear that crash bar close.
Yeah.
And there's something really final about that division, and there's something just really pedestrian about it that I loved. And our sound designer, Thomas Dixon, who I think is brilliant, and I have been working with him since 2003. So he made that sound that, it sounds like it's coming through that door as people are passing through it.
Yeah.
And we worked really hard on like how long do you keep that door open, and how quickly does it close, and how do we keep people looking like they're just walking into the darkness? And it's all very simple theater, but it's
Oh, it was beautiful. It
It
resonated.
was very impactful.
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes that's the best stuff, though. And it's nice to hear that you took you did pay. I mean, they obviously noticed it, right? It's not something that missed them. So you take that much time to do something like that and have it impact people to the point where, we've all had that experience, where you leave a theater and something just embeds kind of in your brain somehow, right? It's I always think it's a great thing when it happens.
Well, that's amazing that's what Tim would bring up. I mean, as an actor, with all of that going on, I saw it as well. That Tim would bring that up.
Yeah.
As an actor, and I know exactly what he means. I sat on that side. My seat was on that side.
Oh, yeah.
So I was, very keenly aware with what was going on with the timing, being on the technical side of everything. And it was very well done. But to hear an actor actually call out that specific part of it is, to me, it just speaks to how remarkable it was.
So how did you get started in this business? How did this happen?
How did this happen?
Yeah.
Where in Colorado were you?
Where in Colorado was it? Well, I was actually born in Columbus.
Oh, okay.
I was born at The Ohio State University, and my dad had mostly grown up in Columbus. He was born in Chicago, grew up in Columbus, and my parents were really part of like the New Age movement. My dad hosted a psychic TV show on cable access
In Columbus?
in Columbus, Ohio,
All right.
in 1982 or
All right.
something. And the psychic woman on the show actually, I think, suggested, this is all family lore to me because I was very young, that if we were to move to Aspen, Colorado, and open a metaphysical store, that we would prosper. And
I mean, why not? I love Aspen, so that
That's
works.
awesome.
why not? Aspen's a beautiful place. So my parents moved the whole family to Aspen, Colorado in 1984, and opened a store called It's Magic at the base of Aspen Mountain.
Really?
They did.
Is it still there?
It is not.
It is
It
not.
only lasted a couple of years.
Okay.
Well, it was a prosperous couple of years.
Because I spent some time in Aspen in the 90, 91, 92, 93.
Okay.
Was it around in that time? You think it made it that far?
No, it did not make it
Okay.
that far. I think I don't, again, I was a little kid, so
Right.
years are always a question to me. But I think it lasted 2 or 3 years,
Okay.
the store, and then it kind of all went poof.
It went metaphysical. It went out into the ether somewhere.
Running a
poof.
retail store, even when you're doing it for spiritual reasons,
That's right.
is hard.
When the spiritual and the reality of commerce meet up together, right?
Right.
And capitalism's gone crazy there in Aspen,
Yeah.
Colorado. Let me tell you, the rents are not cheap.
My brother was he was at Oberlin at the time, and he used to go out and they would do the Aspen Music Festival, and he kind of had a job where he was running the housing for the Aspen Music Festival and had another job at like like the, rafting biking company. So when I was off in the summer, I was touring with shows. I'd be off in the summer and I'd go hang out, and he always had housing for me because he was in charge of the housing.
Yes.
So I had great places, and I'd hang out in Aspen. It was the best.
The music festival was really impactful.
Yeah.
It's funny living in a small town, and yet, the cultural things that came in and out were like huge in my life, like the music festival. And my dad ended up driving a bus. I don't even remember those rafta buses that
I rode on. He worked for a rafting company, so I mean,
yeah. So my dad might have driven your bus. That's what I always try to tell people is like regular people also found a way to live there. I don't know if they can anymore, but
I don't know either. My version was my brother ran the housing, so I didn't have to pay for anything. That's how I did it.
Yeah,
I got free rafting too. So
we lived like 25 miles down the valley in Basalt, and then I came up to school and.
So you went to school in Aspen then?
I did. I went to Aspen. Well, it's one of the reasons why actually when the store closed, my parents were like, "This is some of the best public schools in the country for sure."
Yeah.
And so they really wanted us to keep us in school there. So I'm really grateful to them for that because I grew up in this beautiful place, and also I ended up doing my first play. My sister wanted to audition for the community theater Christmas Carol. And
interesting that you're at the Playhouse now, where Christmas Carol's a staple, right?
Christmas Carol is one of America's favorite stories, which is I love the irony of it because it's always like, we're haunting a major capitalist and
that's right,
and scaring him into being a philanthropist and a better person. Merry Christmas.
America's always been a bit of a contradiction that way, hasn't it?
It is. It's like Christmas, you could turn it around. Never mind.
Did you take to the slopes when you were out there?
You kind of have to. Like, it's a requirement. It's sort of like daycare in the winter. Your folks drop you off and you go to ski school every day. And if you're part of the public schools back then, you got a lift pass for the year for $5.
What?
Oh,
yeah.
For $5.
For $5 if you were a public school student.
Wow.
And so, we all skied. I am like really not athletic. So I did a lot of, drinking cocoa and waiting for my friends. And mostly I wanted to be in dark theaters is what I found out really, really early on. Okay. I spent a lot of time in dark theaters and it's just once I did my first play, I was like, I just loved the community of it. I loved being backstage. I loved everybody involved. And I felt like I got to be somewhere where I was heard and seen. And
were you performing at the time?
I was Belinda Cratchit. And yes, after that, I just got really into theater, and it just kept going that way. I went to Columbia College, Chicago, after I graduated from high school. Columbia College is like this art school in downtown Chicago. My mom didn't want me to go to New York because she thought it was scary, but because we're from the Midwest and my aunt lived in Northwest Indiana, she thought Chicago would be okay.
She could drive to rescue you if things got too hairy.
Exactly. I think the irony is like New York being a big scary city, but I think Chicago's actually probably a scarier city. But
it's funny you say that because I actually agree with you on that. I mean, I remember my first time in both cities, and I was like, Chicago is far more intimidating.
Chicago's a tough city.
Yeah.
And in Columbia College, thank God for it. It's changed a lot over the years, like everything has, right? But we called it the school for second chances because I was sort of it was open admissions, and I did not get good grades in high school, even though.
But they couldn't turn you down. They had to take you.
They had to take me. They had to take me.
All right.
They didn't turn anyone down back then.
Oh, right.
It was great. And like all my teachers were professionals in Chicago theater, and my mentor, Sheldon Patinkin, very early on pulled me aside and said, has it occurred to you that you might be a director? And I was like, do you mean I'm a bad actor? And I started crying.
That was your takeaway from
my
that
takeaway. And he was like, no, I just think you think like a director. And I had directed in high school, but I didn't think that, to be honest, I didn't think girls could be directors.
Yeah.
There's a lot more models for it now, but there were not at the time. Not that I knew that much about theater, but even when you're looking at film directing, which is mostly what you know about as a kid in the middle of nowhere, you're mostly looking at theater.
Just as a side note, and I don't want to interrupt your train of thought there, but a couple things have struck me recently. So I was up in New York not that long ago, and we saw 3 different plays, shows, musicals, whatever. And all 3, not necessarily director, although I'm sure some of them had, Suff certainly had a female director.
That was Silverman, yeah.
But female conductors, musical directors,
Fabulous.
and female sound people. Now, I was there in the early 90s running sound. Mm-hmm. None.
Yeah.
0. I had never in my life seen a female musical director, and the only time I'd seen female sound engineers was like at my theater in Boston we hired, a young woman who came in. I was like, she's good. We need to put her in it.
Yeah.
But and they all had it. And then I saw we were down at the Aronoff and saw something the other day. And again, it was the exact same thing. And I thought, hurrah.
Right?
Yeah. Progress,
hurrah.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot has changed.
And
in
television
25
direction.
years,
When I
yeah.
just watching the credits, and we should pay more attention because it's so easy to skip over the credits if you're watching a TV show, now, or Netflix or whatever. But I kind of stopped to pay attention, and the number of female directors. I'm like, this is great.
It is great. It's a whole different world.
Because it was a boys' club for sure.
It
I mean,
was.
you even sensed it, like you said, not even knowing.
Yeah, and I was one of the only girls to go through that program at the time, and I went back and taught for that program for years, and I had tons of female students.
Yeah.
Now, is that what led to you starting to champion all of those underrepresented groups?
I'm not really sure how. I mean, I will say that when I was in college, so I was excited to be at a really diverse school, and the people that I loved working with were all different, and we came from a lot of different backgrounds. And I formed my first theater company that I ran, really my senior year of college, and then it went on for a few years. And one of the core principles of that company was that we were all from really diverse points of view, and we were making work together. And we meant that in a lot of different ways. We didn't talk about it the same way we do now. I don't think we use the words equity and inclusion yet, but we did talk about diversity, and we did talk about, there were a couple people in the company that were Latin and Black and Asian, and we would work together. And then we were also painters and filmmakers and sculptors and
different discipline or different artistic disciplines.
Different disciplines.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the way we always talked about it, was different disciplines, different backgrounds coming together to fight and hear each other, and that it always made the art better.
Yeah.
It always made the art better.
Yeah.
And I just feel like that was part of my work since I was in my early 20s. It's funny because Aspen is one of the whitest places
on earth.
On earth. My best friend Heather was one of the only people of color in the school, and she was adopted from China by white parents,
right.
And so and was definitely othered, and there was definitely a lot of fighting, but really I came from this incredibly white place, dropped into the South Loop of Chicago, and I was like, this is awesome. Let's all make art together.
But you kind of had parents who maybe embraced that ethos a little bit as well.
Yeah, I think so. I think
I mean, you kind of have to if you're going to open a I mean, it's kind of by default, it's got to have permeated somewhere in there, right?
Yeah. And I think they always instilled a lot of we're all here, we're all human. Let's all love each other.
The Natty Cast is supported by Mad Cheese. Mad Cheese is a completely plant-based, dairy-free cheese and charcuterie shop located in Madisonville. The owners, Cincinnati natives Heather and Reggie Donaldson, handcraft over 30 different plant-based cheeses and meats in their commercial production kitchen behind the storefront. You're invited to stop in and sample the wide array of products, book a curated tasting, or sign up for the new subscription box program, which will feature an exclusive new cheese every month with recipes and board building tutorials. For more, head to Instagram and Facebook at Mad Cheese Cincy or go to www.madcheese.com. And with that, back to the show.
I mean, Ron and Tim and I went to the performing arts school together, right? We graduated in '86. And, back then, and we've talked about it actually quite a bit on this podcast, but the school was completely integrated 50%. And it was, I mean, it was a different school even than what it is today. It was kind of an amazing place to grow up in. And we always talk even amongst ourselves about the fact that when we ventured out into the world, they used to say, I mean, I always remember it. This isn't the real world. When you get to the real world, you'll see what it's like out there. And we're all like, you're just old. You don't know what it's like. It's like until you walk out there and you realize, the world actually isn't integrated like this.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just integration, right? It wasn't just race. It was economic.
Yeah.
Which I think, don't you agree, Tim, was like a huge impact.
Totally.
We were all coming from, I mean, we had kids from the richest part of towns all the way down to, the poorest kids in town.
That's interesting.
And you'd come in there together, and really the litmus test was talent.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that was the proof.
You might not have penny loafers or the newest polo shirt, but you better hit that high note.
That's right.
That was absolutely crazy, yeah. We went to school with some of the richest kids in the country, actually.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing.
Of course, we're not going to say any names, but...
Right.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
But I was just going to add there, too, with on Joanie, because I don't know if you knew, Joanie, I was in Chicago, like in the early... When I graduated college... That was kind of my jumping point. And the great thing about Chicago is not only the community, but the theater communities. There's so many theater companies, and like there's so much happening. And I don't know other cities that really have that same vibe, in that regard with theater companies everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was sort of I felt like I had to sort of come out as starting a theater company to my teachers who were all my friends. But because it was such a joke, it was always like, what do you call two actors in a room in Chicago? A theater company. Right. There was so many theater companies. And back then, especially before, I don't know, there was this fire in a nightclub at some point in the early 2000s, and people got stampeded. And then they created this public performance place license that you had to get, and a bunch of theaters got shut down.
Oh, like it was just in a warehouse space, or it didn't have enough.
It was just like a club that didn't have enough.
No, but I mean, they clamped down on people just having a little theater in a back corner of a warehouse.
But back in the 90s, and maybe Tim, you remember this, there were places like Cafe Voltaire where like it was a coffee shop, and in the basement was a quote theater.
Yeah.
But it was a basement. It was just a basement.
Right.
And people made plays in it, kind of, but like. It was one of those things where like you could cheaply make a play anywhere.
Yeah.
And those were the days. Like I performed, I had like a sort of performance artist streak, and I performed in bars and like above bars and in weird loft spaces. And then once they started clamping down on that, it actually became harder and harder to be two actors in a room and become a theater company magically.
Right.
But
so you have that conversation with Sheldon, and that was the switch, really, for you? And then you said, this is the lane I'm going to drive in?
I think he was right. He was like, just try taking some directing classes and see what happens. And I really liked it. And I think that there were some things that pushed me out of acting. I do feel like I was in a couple abusive situations with directors. And it's something we all talk about in the theater a lot now, but, dealing with intimacy on stage and that sort of thing. And I felt very vulnerable, like a 19-year-old woman being like, well, I guess I have to do this if I'm going to be an actor, and then feeling terrible about myself. And I was like, I want to make rooms, like I want to be in charge of the rooms so that people aren't having to have this experience. And also I think I've always had this streak where like secretly I've always really actually just wanted to be a writer. And so something about my ability to like work with actors and deal with performance, and like the part of me that's always storytelling and writing. And I feel like I work well with a script because I can pick it apart and analyze it. I'm a really good editor, I think, in a lot of ways. And bringing my sort of storytelling mind to that and reacting to a play has actually been better for me than trying to write a play from scratch.
Well, I mean, it's a gift of a director, and it's fantastic that you have the experience kind of on both sides of that world, because it does take both those brains. I mean, we've all been around writers who would have no idea how to take what's on this page and mount it up there where people are going to get up and leave, right? I mean, it's true. They write something brilliant, but they can't they can't realize it in a way that then appeals to people. And that's not an easy thing to do, as you're well aware.
I don't know if any of the jobs are easy. I hope that we all find our spots in them. But I don't know. I just fell in love with it. And it became my world. I kind of just became obsessed with directing for a long time. Wanted to learn everything about it. I just remember being a student in school. I was so excited. I did like independent studies so I could study great directors, and I read every book I possibly could, and I just tried to like absorb it all. And I went to graduate school in Northwestern. I just wanted to learn everything. And
now that one you had to get into. They didn't have open admission there.
Northwestern is not an open admission school.
Yeah, right.
It's very funny. My mentor, Anna Shapiro, who was running the program then, she also went to Columbia College. There are some great There's some great famous Broadway directors, her and David Cromer, who also went to Columbia College, I think
kind of pull you out and do something.
like before I did, like probably I think 10 years before I did, they were the ones that we all looked up to. And she, when I got to Northwestern, she was like, so I turned in my first couple papers, and she's like, you have to go to the writing center. And I was like, what are you talking about? I won awards for my essays at Columbia College. She was like, I went from Columbia College to Yale, so I totally get it. But it was just not an academic school.
Yeah.
They were like, I was like, but I'm an award-winning essayist. And she was like, at Columbia College.
At Columbia College. That's right. You forgot the end of that sentence, right?
And now you're at Northwestern, where like geniuses go. And I was like, oh, okay. It was very humbling.
Is there a particular piece that in those college days that you first directed that really sits with you that you want to talk about?
The Natty Cast would like to take this opportunity to tell you about Red Oak Animal Rescue. It is a local nonprofit animal sanctuary right here in the Cincinnati area. If you're looking for a good way to give back to your community and see some cute animals on your feed all at the same time, please head over to Red Oak Animal Rescue on Instagram or Facebook, or check them out at their website, redoakanimalrescue.com. The best way to support Red Oak Animal Rescue is to check out the Patreon page and sign up for a monthly subscription, or click the link to check out some of their adorable merch. Once again, the Natty Cast is very happy to support Red Oak Animal Rescue, and with that, back to the show.
Ooh, what did I direct in college? I wasn't expecting that question. I love that question.
Yeah.
Because I love what I did there. I got to direct three productions in college, and one was a one act, and I adapted. I did my own translation adaptation of Chekhov's The Bear, because I thought I could do that. It's funny because I'm adapting The Seagull right now, which is, I haven't done that since college, since I was like, I can do this.
Since you were an award-winning writer.
I know, I'm much more humble now.
Humble, that's right. It's been a humbling period between that award-winning Columbia College.
Wait, she's at the table right now with her hands on her hips, like a superhero. I can do that.
I also did a production of Racing's Phaedra, which is, based on the Greek myth about the woman who is cursed and falls in love with her stepson. And it had a lot of like black lights and trip hop. Yeah.
Right.
That's awesome.
No, that's great.
Come on.
It was very 1998,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, the time is now, right? You have to hit it when it's hot.
You got to play all the tricky you can. And then this play called Slaughter City by Naomi Wallace, which is sort of a magical realism piece about, it's very political, about unions and the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire, where those women were burned alive, and just workers versus the owners, and the whole thing, but like
it's a Christmas
very magical,
Carol.
strange.
No, I'm sorry.
It's just like a Christmas Carol. But I think all of the things in those three plays are all seen in what I love to do now.
Have you ever
Awesome.
been able to go back and direct a play a second time?
I have. I directed this play called A Small Fire at Steep Theater, where I'm a company member. It's this little 50-seat ensemble theater company I'm part of in Chicago. And Adam Bach wrote this play, and it is about a woman who she like runs a construction company. She's sort of like a badass, hard-ass woman. And she starts losing her senses one by one.
Oh,
wow.
And the first one is she loses her sense of smell, and then, of course, her sense of taste, because they kind of go together. And then she loses her vision and then her hearing. And it's this beautiful play. It gives me chills just to talk about because you know, she's so like hard ass and she's kind of mean to her husband. And at the end, there's this beautiful scene. They're in like their 60s where they make love, and she's like, I can still feel.
Oh,
and like,
man.
oh, yeah. I love plays like this. I love plays with a lot of metaphor. And I directed it in this 50-seat house, and it was beautiful and challenging. It's a very challenging play to direct. And then I was given the opportunity to do it 5 years later at Philadelphia Theater Company, starring Bebe Neuwirth.
wow.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Her.
And I think Bebe had chosen the play with Paige Price, the artistic director. And I got really lucky. I got sloppy seconds. Sarna Lapine was going to direct it, and she got something on the West End. and Paige and I knew each other. She had actually run Theater Aspen for a while, and we had a lot of conversations while she was running Theater Aspen. And she called me about doing this play. She didn't even know I directed it before. And,
really? I assumed that like, maybe when somebody
like,
dropped out, they're like, hey, I know somebody who knows this play.
Yeah, I was like, did you know I've directed it? She's like, no, I just thought you might be good and you might get along with Bebe. And of course, Bebe interviewed me.
Right.
And I was actually like, I was on the Northwestern campus for something, and I was like talking on my phone outside. I was like, cannot believe I'm talking to Bebe Neuwirth, who's sort of like a hero to me.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I feel really lucky that she liked me enough to
Over the phone, even.
over the phone
Wow.
to say like, we can do this together. And that was an incredible experience. She was perfect for the role. I mean, you know, describing this like hard ass woman, and then like watching her kind of get more and more vulnerable through the piece. And she's a beautiful actor, just a beautiful actor. A lot of like method training. I got to hear all these stories about Bob Fosse.
Yeah.
It was so cool.
Right.
It was so cool, and an incredible cast. It's a 4-person play, and I just it's one of the works I'm most proud of. Like it was so fascinating and wonderful, and just like what an honor to work with one of your heroes.
Wow, we're going to see it at the Playhouse at some point soon. It's going to slipped into the stack for 2028 or something.
I wish I could get Bebe to come out and do that.
Yeah.
Maybe I should call her.
Yeah, I mean, come on, you said you're looking a couple years out now.
You
You
do
can
that
put on
again?
that. Yeah,
It's a good idea. You guys heard it here first.
there we go.
Yeah.
We're breaking news all the time here on the Natty Cast. And you were just kind of telling us, so you're in Chicago, and then you moved to Northwestern, and then you have to go out into the world. Are you still performing, or are you now solely directing at that point?
No, I retired as an actor at 22 years old. After I played Juliet, I was like, okay, I'm done.
Well, I mean,
Well, that's a hell of an exit.
In all seriousness, you know, as I was like going out into the world after college, this was between college and grad school. I worked at Steppenwolf Theater for 3 years and ran my theater company. And I was auditioning for some things, but I look younger than I am, and back then I looked like a teenager, and it was just so hard to be taken seriously as a
when
director.
you said you'd moved up there in 2003, I was thinking, or 2001, I was like, really? 2001, I think you said. I'm like, associate artistic director 2001 up there. I didn't realize that.
yeah. No, I'm not. I don't look that much younger than I am, but yeah, I was having a hard time. Like, there was something about auditioning for things, and I think being multi-hyphenate is much more accepted now than it was back then.
Sure.
I feel like everybody was very much like, you have to focus on one thing.
Right.
And I really wanted to focus on directing, and I just wanted to garner that respect from my fellow directors, and I didn't feel like I would get that by auditioning for them.
Right. Yeah,
And
love
so
that.
I was like, you know what? I don't like doing this enough to do that. I really want to focus on directing. So I did that pretty early.
And how do you do your casting? I'm curious about that. I've got to sit in the back of rooms You know, again, as a sound person, we get to usually sneak in and sit and watch things we probably shouldn't be watching. I've watched a lot of auditions and casting sessions, and talk a little bit about that audition process, because you clearly had been through it, and what you feel like for the performer. And I mean, it's just it's such a humbling experience for the people on the stage. How do you approach it? How do you do it?
I feel for actors so much. I think it must be one of the hardest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's because I was going to ask too, like, and maybe you'll get to it, but like, even from the self-tape, like what I miss so much is going into the room.
Yeah.
And I know I'm not alone in that, but like, unfortunately, it just feels like it's here to stay. So
I think the self-tape is a blessing and a curse. I think it's got both ends of that for sure. Because, well, before I talk about that, I guess I'll just talk a little bit about in the room.
Yeah.
Which is, I try to be really prepared and have a lot of ideas about what I'm looking for. But for me, I have to say, there's only so much of that I can do with like the, how do I put this? With like the conscious part of my brain. So much of it is vibe.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
I know what kind of people I'm looking for. I know, I know like if I have to make sure that the actor can both do this part of that role and this part of that role. Like, I know I've got to check both things, like they have to be able to be really vulnerable and a hard ass, right? Like you have to be able to see both of those things in an audition. So, I know what I'm looking for in the range. And, but so much of an audition for me is, it has to do with like how I respond and how excited I get about somebody. I know that like for me, it has so much to do with like, does this person get me more excited about the play? And that only comes from us, like from me creating a really welcoming room, and so that we can really just actually work together for that 10 minutes.
Get through that first piece so that you'll have a chance at least to try to make a connection of some kind.
Yeah. So like, how are we talking? How are we vibing? Like, if I tell you this, what will you do with it? And it takes a lot of energy to do that. I have to say, like, it does. But that's really so much of it. And you can't do that with a self-tape, right? But you can see people for the first time on a self-tape at least.
Right.
And there's something that, to me, that I love about that, because it democratizes the world of like where artists can live. Because, Tim, you live in New York, like it's really expensive. Like, do you have to live there? I don't know. Like, so many people I know are moving out of Hollywood, right? Because they're like, we don't really have to live here anymore.
Right.
It's really expensive, and I'd actually really rather live somewhere else. There's a lot of amazing places to live in the world. And the other thing that I love is that regional theater actors are getting more of a shake, because I can see an actor from Kansas City and Milwaukee and Chicago and Cincinnati, not just the actors who live in New York. And that you can kind of compare all of that. I really still find that it's necessary to try to do some sort of in-person callback.
But you'd almost like say that first round can tell you who maybe isn't right for the role.
Right.
But then you have a basket of people that you can go, okay, at least now if we bring them in for a callback or we spend that time together, you at least go into it with a better. I mean, it's if somebody comes in, they might be very talented, but they're just not, as you said, right. They can't tick these particular boxes.
Yeah.
So, that's not going to happen. So maybe that eases that up, because that person can also audition for 4 things in one day.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which they could never do before.
Right. They can do it in their living room.
Yeah.
They can send it anywhere. They can, like, I do think that that's the really great part of the tapes.
So are you able to still do in-person callbacks?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely always shoot for it. Sometimes I still end up with a role here or there where it's like, oh, we couldn't get the person to come in person. And I find and then we do a Zoom callback so that you're still interacting with the person, but it still doesn't show you, especially because you're casting for live theater, it doesn't show what they'll look like in
1, 2, 3 dimensions. Okay.
Yeah.
I can see and hear them without being able to interact with them. But even on a Zoom call, you're only adding the fact that it's a little back and forth, right? It doesn't.
Yeah. It's not the same. It's definitely not the same. And
for either of you.
Yeah.
Right?
For either of us. And I think the hardest part is when you're casting something for the larger stage for, when we're doing something for Mo and Jack's Place, the Rouse Theater, which is our bigger stage. There's a difference between an ability, to project, to fill that stage than there is. The Shelter House is beautifully small and intimate, and you don't have to do nearly as much of that, although you still have to be able to project in that room because there's audience on 3 sides. And
it can kind of die. I've run sound in there before, and it it can be tough when, it's like you say, it's in addition to being 3 sides, it's also a fairly dead space.
Yeah.
It's not very ambient.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard because, it feels intimate and clearly to the actors because, you're playing to, that's what I always liked about those kinds of things because it feels like, okay, I don't remember what it seats there, but if it's like 100.
It's 172.
Okay. So let's say 50, 50, 50. Mm-hmm. It feels like, I think to the actor on the stage, you're playing to 50.
Yeah.
Right? Because anywhere you turn, they're about 50 away.
Yeah.
So that's the intimate part of it. But as you're playing this way, you still have to pick those people up over
those people behind your back have to hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a tough thing to do. Because you generally don't have reinforcement in there.
Right. And sometimes we do in the Rouse. Sometimes we might.
Yeah.
Not all the time, but yeah.
I got to say, you hit it out of the ballpark with the cast of Birthday Candles. That was cast to perfection.
Oh, thank you.
And a special shout out to fellow SCPA alum Mirka, a.k.a. Mookie Triantafilo. She was fantastic.
Yeah, that was a really great cast. And that was actually a hard one to cast because everybody plays so many different roles. And so the choice is actually way more open because they also play role like, Ernestine, the main character, you meet her at 17 and you spend time with her up to 107. And actually the first time I read the play, I thought there was an actor who is now not with us anymore, who I loved in Chicago and loved working with, Marianne Thebus, who when I worked with her was 82. I think when I read the play, she was probably closer to 86. And I was like, wouldn't it be cool to do this play with her?
Oh, that's awesome.
And that's why I think every version of it would be different.
But that's fascinating because normally everybody thinks, I'll cast the younger person who'll play old.
Yeah.
But that's great, right? To say, hey, let's cast somebody who's in there, and have them play back.
Yeah. I think that would have been really interesting. I then went with Barbara Chisholm, who's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of like Deborah Messing was for the New York production.
Right.
She's somewhere in the middle. You do spend a lot of time in middle life with this person, but I think you could do it a lot of different ways. Like you could pick a young person to do it with. Like you could do it with somebody in their 20s. I don't know what that would be like, but could be fascinating. Anyway, so just really trying to figure that out, and I've known of a lot of productions that have done it just in a very different way than I have. So
sure.
Yeah. So a lot of that was on like vibe and not on like what is your age and ethnicity. It was like, you sort of feel like you fit this.
Did you come to the Playhouse first time as like just a director? Did they just hire you in to direct something? Was that your first experience, or how did you get connected with the Playhouse?
No, actually. So we had that pandemic thing, and
that pesky pandemic.
That pesky pandemic.
That's right.
And that's
still affecting us all.
Oh boy, howdy. I had run a theater company in Dallas for 2 years, from 2017 through the end of 2018, and I left that job and sold my house in Dallas in 2019, and then kind of like floated around a little bit, but moved back to Chicago really near the end of 2019, like just in time. And I was freelance directing around the country, but I at least lived back in Chicago. So when all of that happened, I was just totally unemployed for the first time in my life. I've always had like 7 jobs. And I was like, what do I do? And so did that for a while. And then I started teaching acting on Zoom.
Oh, wow. I'm sorry. I can feel the pain of that.
So that all started... I'm
sorry. Unmute yourself. Yeah. Okay. Unmute yourself. Let's take the scene from the top. The emotional arc. No, unmute yourself
on Zoom.
I was getting real creative. And
Turn off the background filter. I don't need the Mickey Mouse ears on you right now.
It was so weird because it was with 2 different graduate programs in opera too. I've directed a bunch of opera. I was married for 10 years to an opera conductor, so I was very connected in the opera world, and so I ended up teaching for the grad program at Northwestern and at Roosevelt University, both in Chicago, and was like directing arias. And I also like directed these small opera projects on Zoom. And then I was teaching these acting classes where like literally I was like teaching them how to act in their Zoom boxes. And it was so hard.
Wow.
It was exhausting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was doing that 5 days a week starting in the fall of 2020 and did that through that year. And I directed weird stuff on, you know, it was like we did like Zoom theater, and then I went to DC and directed like a 3-camera shoot of a one-woman show, and that was kind of cool. But it was all really ungratifying. And this job description came up of Playhouse in the Park. They were looking for an associate artistic director. They hadn't had an associate artistic director for like the last decade.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that because and when I was, taking a look at your bio beforehand and I saw the title and I'm thinking, yeah, I've been aware of my whole life of that. And it's like, I don't remember that being there. So that's,
Yeah, Michael Haney left about 10 years ago.
Right.
I mean, probably now I've been here 3 years, so probably 13 years ago or so. But because there was just like all sorts of change happening at the Playhouse. So
well, they were doing the fundraising to build this. I mean, that's been going on a long time.
Yes.
Did you come in before it was done? Did you do anything in the old Marks Theater?
I never did anything in that theater, but I moved here before they tore it down.
Okay.
Yeah, and Blake had been artistic director, but he moved into the role of producing artistic director when Buzz Ward, the former executive director, left. So what that means is he's the only one who reports to the board. Like the buck stops with him. And
Sure.
He has a very different position. Like he's in charge of artistic, but he's also in charge of
running the business.
Yeah. And he hired Abby Marcus, who's a great managing director, to like be his right-hand woman in that side, and then hired me as associate artistic director to be his right-hand woman on the other side. Picked two tough ladies to sit next to him and help make this company happen. So I loved that there hadn't been anybody in the position, to be honest. Like it was kind of cool.
You could invent what that is, right? Rather than a bunch of expectations. Well, that's not what
so-and-so did. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And there was an interest in building more infrastructure around new work and doing all sorts of new things with the opening of the new building, and making sure that the work is better reflecting the community as a whole. So really, we've been working on expanding the programming to be more diverse and inclusive, but also, working in the programs, the programs we have with the Arts and Culture Incubator and Resident Artists, which is a new program since our building opened, where we have a couple of partner organizations, small nonprofit organizations that use our space, mostly on Monday nights when we're dark. And we have a couple of resident artists who are using our space to develop new work.
Oh, that's fantastic.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a great program, and I think people have gotten a lot out of it. And so knowing we were going to be doing all that, and I got to be part of all this change, was really exciting to me.
Yeah. And so when you came here, you were aware of the Playhouse or what it was? You had never been there? I'd
never been to Cincinnati. I hadn't been to the Playhouse. I'd heard of it, obviously. Like it's one of the big Lort theaters of the U.S.
Yeah.
And I'd heard of Blake, and I'd had some friends who directed here, and so I did I think 2 Zoom interviews, and just really hit it off with folks. And then they flew me down here for a couple days to check it out. And I was like, where am I? I was like, I just landed in Kentucky. What's happening?
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, why are there so many hills here? Isn't this the Midwest?
Right.
And it just really sounded like it was the right thing to try for a little bit. I had a hard time with the theater in Texas. It was a rough time for me, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to still do arts leadership, and this felt like a really good way to test the waters.
Okay. Wow.
And I was like, I'll just be the associate, and then it's not that big of a deal. Like if I'm like, I don't like this, I'm going to go away. But it actually turns out that associate artistic director is the best job in the American theater.
Wow.
And I will fight anybody on that. It is it is a job in which I get to do all the cool, like, I get to help program the season and bring in artists and like do all this groovy stuff and
come out to podcasts.
and come on podcasts.
At the end of the day, it's a business. And I always tell people, I mean, I run a business, and I always tell people, you know, when you start running a business, usually it's something you're in.
Right.
Once you get to the top of it, you just end up hiring people to do the stuff that you used to do in the business while you're running the business. So what you're saying is that position down, you still get to do all of the cool stuff, and you get to let them deal with all that other stuff.
Yeah,
right?
And Blake actually, like, the buck's up. He's the one who has to answer to the board.
Exactly.
I get to like be friendly with the board and like come in and say cool stuff about art, and they're like, "You're neat," and I'm like, "So are you," and then, you know, I don't have to do all that other stuff, and I don't have to be responsible at the end of the day. I do have to, you know, like, I do bring things to Blake that he says yes or no to, and then I'm like, "Oh, you're the boss."
Exactly.
You're in charge.
So when you roll into Cincinnati, what surprises you about Cincinnati, disappoints you about Cincinnati, and then also, like, how does it feel in relation to all these other cities you've been involved with?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was definitely a transition for me to come from Chicago, and especially post-pandemic, because I hear that, like, grocery stores used to be open later and that sort of thing before, which I was like, I can't go grocery shopping at midnight. What are you guys talking about? I had a lot of moments like that at first where I'm like just really spoiled from being in a big city of like being able to do weird things at weird times.
Yeah.
So that was like one of the hardest things to get used to. But that's not a really big deal at the end of the day.
Less traffic, easier commute to the airport, certainly.
Way easier commute to the airport, way easier airport to deal with. But I do usually have to like fly through another city.
You have to change planes.
I have to change planes a lot more often now. But I can also get all my errands done in one afternoon.
Yeah, well, there you go.
You can't do that in Chicago. Like, can I really do all this in 3 hours? I'm like, I can.
And for a city this size, the art scene, I've always thought that we kind of punch a bit above our weight arts-wise. I don't know what your feeling is.
Yes, that's the most important thing, really, is that the arts community, the community of artists here, and the community of people who support the arts and are interested in the arts and like want to participate is phenomenal here for the size of the city. I mean, you know, Arts Wave had an event last night announcing, you know, they just finished their campaign or wrapping up their campaign. The amount of money that they raised, I think it was like $12.3 million. Yeah. And the amount of people there who really care about the arts, like this city really cares about the arts in an unusual way, I think.
Yeah. It has for a long time.
Yeah.
It's always been,
Yeah, I think it's because it's so ingrained. Yeah. And it's been this way for so long.
And the wealthy class, you know, in Ohio, Cincinnati was always the white collar town versus maybe Columbus a little bit, but Cleveland certainly more of a blue collar town.
Yeah.
But all the wealthy people that started Procter and Gamble's and all those people, all that money that's the Corbett's. I mean, there was money that spread out. I mean, Linders. You see Lindners, Mayersons. I mean, the list goes on and on. I'm leaving out.
Yeah.
But that idea of not only philanthropy, but arts philanthropy, you know, the fact that we have an opera company the way we do, a symphony the way we do, the Pops, the Playhouse in the Park, and then ensemble theater, the ballet.
The new facility right there.
Yeah.
You know, you look at all of that stuff, and you look at the size of the city and the support then that comes of it, right? That you have a community of people that come out and support those things. It's so important, transformative. I mean, we went to the performing arts school, and that was, you know, grew up out of people who thought that way.
Yeah, and I think it's really unusual. Having spent time in a lot of other cities in America, I think the fact that people really care about the arts, that they want to participate, and they also believe in philanthropy, because I actually don't think that that's a value that every community has anymore. You know, I think that those old school, you know, Rockefellers and Mellons and Carnegies, right?
All of those people we're talking about were of that era.
Yeah.
They came out of that mindset of...
That was the mindset, and that is not as much the mindset of the wealthy now. Yeah. And I wish it was, because it really created so much. I mean, so much that you see everywhere. And I love that is still being passed on here. And I actually see it being passed on not just from, like, you know, the older generation here, but they're passing that on to the people who are my age. Yeah. and younger. And, I watch younger people come onto our board who are being sort of trained by their families and by the
this is
elder
what you
people
do
on our boards. Like, this is
your-
what we do. This is important.
Yeah,
And without that being in the community, we will lose something.
I agree.
And
The parks are interesting in my mind right? So you have this park system that is so heavily supported. I mean, the Playhouse literally sits in Eden
in
Park.
a park. Yeah.
It's such a unique thing to this city that so long ago that people were visionary enough to set those things aside and to create these spaces, arts,
Yes.
public spaces like parks and things. It's one of the things I'm always most proud of Cincinnati for, growing up here, leaving, venturing out into the world. But when people would come back, they're always surprised by it. So I was just curious what your feeling was.
Yeah. Well, and what's so cool now too is that I get to be part of bringing in these artists who then when they come and work with us, they stay down the hill and they walk up a bunch of stairs and live in Eden Park and Mount Adams. And they're like, this is beautiful. And it's funny, especially this last cast for for Birthday Candles. They were all so enamored with Cincinnati, and I just keep feeling like it's a secret.
Yeah.
Like, people don't realize. I had no idea what a great place this was until I lived here. And then even then, I think feel like I also came, it was still we were all kind of a little bit shut in when I got here. So it took a little time for me to start getting out and realizing how much is really happening here.
What part of town do you live?
I live in Northside.
In Northside, great. Well, that
Shout
is
out.
Yeah.
I love
Shout out to
Northside.
Roots.
Well, So the interesting thing is if I look around today, the community that reminds me most of Mount Adams when I was growing up is Northside.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So you talked about having hippie parents. I mean,
Yeah.
Mount Adams was a combination when I was growing up of slums, old school people who'd lived up on the hill for years, and then kind of, let's call them the hippies who'd moved in the 60s, right? And so, I think my parents were probably the first. I mean, they were of the same age, but kind of the first wave of, let's call it, the beginnings of gentrification. But that building that they bought, my mom still owns it. It's on the corner of Parkside and Loudon. So it's the brick building that sits there. We grew up in an apartment building. We rented these apartments out. But I think they bought it for $15,000.
Wow.
And it didn't even have hot water flats in there. Where it's 6 cold water flats and things like that. So the hill was a totally different place growing up. And they, like I said, they watched that Playhouse get built and then watched the hill transform. But Northside is a cool community.
It's a cool community.
Because unfortunately now the one problem people can't afford to, it's so expensive to live up there.
Yeah.
For people, but you kind of get a little bit of that taste over at Northside still.
Yeah, I have this great little house. I live right on Parker Woods.
Nice.
I walk through the woods every day. I'm like, this is great. It's
Yeah.
I part live in the country, I part live in the city.
Yeah.
Talk about beautiful parks. Those having that forest right there is amazing.
Yeah.
Now, along the lines of participation, you mentioned earlier that you were bringing people into the Playhouse, like when you're dark experimental theaters and things like that. Talk to us a little bit about that.
So the incubator program right now, we have a few art companies that participate. One is the Young Professionals Chorus, it's YPCC, Chorus of Cincinnati, right? And they have some events there, and they rehearse there sometimes.
Gotcha,
and
okay.
so mostly we're giving them space to use, and we chat with them a lot. All of these places we're like, we'll give you whatever resources. Cincinnati Pride uses our space sometimes for meetings and that sort of thing, sometimes a workshop. The Urban Native Collective, they record a podcast at the Playhouse about once a month, maybe once every other month, and have other events there. And they're just an ongoing partner too. And so what that means sometimes is we'll partner with them on a show the Thanksgiving play by Larissa Fast Horse. They were partners with us because it's a play written by a Native woman and, really about white people putting on a Thanksgiving play. But having
it's the Christmas Carol. No.
Having a consultant from that community partner with us and talk to us about, what was in the play and right now we have a red dress in the lobby because it's the to bring awareness to violence against Native women. And that's all part of our partnership with them. Ghostlight Theater Collective is another one. They've had a lot of different kinds of events at our space. They do a lot of workshops for artists, which are really cool in a variety of things that, artists from the community might want to know about, from like taxes to intimacy on stage to all sorts of things. Sure. But also they've had readings and fashion shows, and it's cool to have the building have all these things happening on Monday nights. And we've had a couple different resident artists. The ones that are going to be with us for the upcoming year and have been with us for a year are Maggie Lou Rader, who's an actor and playwright in town, and Isaiah Reeves, who's a wonderful emerging playwright. And they're both really prolific playwrights. I'm like, how many plays have you written in the last year? And they're workshopping their material. They've had some public readings in our rehearsal spaces.
But it's so important to give them. I mean, we were talking about that. We had a guest on, Randy Donaldson. Talking about staging something in a musical. Just you can sit and you can write and you can workshop the stuff, but you have to see it, hear it. Right, and go, oh, this is working, this isn't working. It's so important.
Feel it.
So,
you got to feel it.
Yeah.
But it's so expensive for these people. I mean, it's impossible for them to even get the opportunity to do a reading, let alone a little bit of a staging or something. It's great.
Yeah, no, I think it's been a great thing for the companies and the artists who've been doing it, and we are always not always, but we certainly have our eye out for other partners who might be able to use the space in the way that we can provide. And we just love to have the space like open and hopping on Monday nights.
Roger that.
Yeah. So if we were to swing that around, like what would be your dream play that you would want to mount that you haven't been able to do yet, and maybe what actor would you love to work with?
That's a big question.
Yeah.
My dream play. Well, there's always those plays that are like, this is too expensive and we're never going to be able to do it.
Right.
So oddly, I've never directed a musical. I've directed a ton of opera and I've directed a ton of plays.
Okay.
Wow.
And I've never directed a musical. And I, like, my little pet project that we have budgeted a couple times and we keep going, there's no way we could ever do this, is the musical adaptation of the movie Bring It On.
Oh,
nice!
Is that back to your '90s roots? Is that where that comes from?
It is back to my '90s roots. I was a varsity cheerleader.
There you go.
Also, things you wouldn't expect to hear from me.
I never would have.
Wow. Yeah.
That was not on the bingo card I had for you. Having talked to you.
For those of you who can't see me because it's a podcast, you wouldn't expect it.
Yeah. How do we connect it to a Christmas? How do we bring it on to a Christmas Carol? There's got to be a way to do it.
But, it's got this great score. It was, I'm going to forget their names, but the composer and lyricist of Next to Normal and Lin-Manuel Miranda. Yeah. They brought them together because, it's actually based on Bring It On 3, not the storyline of Bring It On 1.
Oh, well, there you go.
I'm not that in depth of the canon of Bring It On. I didn't watch.
There are many, many Bring It Ons at this point.
They've brought it on many times.
And so, like the young blonde girl who's going to be captain of the cheerleaders gets redistricted to a urban school, and then she convinces them to start a cheerleading squad too. And so Lin-Manuel Miranda was his job was to write all the music for the urban school.
Sis boom bob. Quite. I don't know how you.
So, but then they all the composers started working together actually, and it's a pretty fun score. It's a pretty fun play. It's just one of those things that I'm like, this would be super fun to do. People would be really into it. You have to find actors who are willing to be thrown in the air. It would be a lot.
It's
but,
a thing.
Yeah.
Do you find that there's a difference directing opera to a play? I mean, you said not a musical, but I mean, like, is that? I'm fascinated by that. Like how?
Opera's like a whole different beast.
Yeah,
for sure. And I bring a lot of my theater training obviously to it,
Sure.
but there's only like the buck stops in a couple of places for sure. As a stage director, you're usually going in and working on a piece that like almost everybody else has done.
Right.
Because people go around and they sing Don Jose in Carmen over and over and over again. And so
Right.
they know the piece better than you do. Well, you have to study really hard. I mean, it's a lot of like, you got to really, really know your stuff and come in and have an idea and also be really flexible with what the singers need. And they mostly, for the most part, don't have a whole lot of acting training. So you have to figure out how to meet them where they are and also like get the best performance out of them and respect them as actors.
Sure.
I do think that they are actors. They just don't have the same kind of training that like an actor has from going through, 4 years of acting school or whatever. So it is a really different beast. And just like the aria as a construction is really different than most things we do in the theater.
Right.
Like to sit in one emotional feeling, really. Like, we learn in theater training that everything needs to have, that you're always working on intention, not emotion, right? That you're always like, what's my action? What's my intention? We're not supposed to play emotion, but you can't do that in an aria that you're just standing.
That's all about emotion.
Yeah. It's all about emotion and the development of an
Yeah.
emotion from like here to there. You have to be able to willing to like really go into that. So I had to untrain that part of myself a little bit to be willing to go to that place in opera. But opera is a really fun medium. I've had some of my most fun stagings that I've loved doing opera.
It's so
just
grand.
a really challenging thing.
Wow.
Yeah. And as a director too, like you're never in charge of the tempo of anything. Like that is the maestro.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not you. And so you have to also reverse engineer stuff.
I never really thought about that, right? All pacing, which is a huge part of directing.
Yeah.
It's totally out of your hand.
It's totally out of your
Yeah.
hand. You're like, okay, I have to fill the 7 measures.
Yeah.
So I have to figure out what this character is doing in these 7 measures instead of just being like, well, he just walks here to the door and it takes however long
Right.
it takes.
Yeah. I never thought about that.
Yeah. So there's the choreography sort of
Right.
way of thinking in it too.
I can't believe you never directed a musical. That's amazing.
I've never directed a musical. I
Well,
know.
we
it's-
happen to know someone who wrote a musical, or I'm sorry, someone who's producing a
Who's
musical.
produ-
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, so we'll introduce
Yeah.
you. He was a guest here.
He was a guest here. Yeah.
Oh,
So,
fantastic.
yeah, so-
Fantastic.
we're not going to tell you who. You're going to have to go back and listen to the rest of the episodes.
Go through the archives to find them.
and then when you get there, make sure to like and share and subscribe.
And
So, yeah, go
this
ahead,
is a
Tim.
question I ask all of our guests, and
Okay.
this will be unique because you're not from Cincinnati per se,
Right.
but as a sports this is a sports question. So if you were to wear a sport jersey, any sport, whatever it may be, but whose name would be on the back of the jersey?
Have you been to any sporting events in Cincinnati since you've lived here?
Oh, we're going to
Okay,
change
that's
that.
gonna
We're going to
change.
change that.
We're taking her
you
to a Reds game.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. How about your actor? Who's the one
Oh,
actor
yeah.
that you haven't worked with
In your
that you want to
dream.
work with? We're gonna do that instead of the jersey.
Oh, dream actor.
Dream
okay.
actor.
Okay, I'm going to say something really poignant because maybe he'll listen. But I have heard tell that Emilio Estevez has a house here.
He does.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think we should put him in a play at the Playhouse.
Oh, this
I
needs
love
to happen.
that.
I don't know if he's ever been in a play because his whole career has been in film. But I think we should talk to him about doing a play.
So I saw him. He did a thing for, I think it was Cincinnati Film put it on at Memorial Hall next to Music Hall downtown.
Okay.
And it was he and his dad who shot a film here in town together. So Martin Sheen grew up in Dayton and kind of the Cincinnati area, huge fans. And so Emilio had some experience growing up because I think his family still lived there. And I think even they did for a while growing up. And they came and talked about their film, but also just their careers in general down there as a support for Cincinnati Film. But I guess when he came, from what I understood, when he came to town, they shot, I think it was called The Public, and his dad was in it. It was shot down at the library. So he shot that movie down there. And I think he just kind of came and was like, much like you said, he was like, this place is great.
This is great.
And he bought a condo. He's the voice on the streetcar if you go, announcing the stops.
Oh,
that's
so
Emilio
great.
Estevez. And so I'd heard he was here. So prior to that, I'd heard he was here. And there's a bakery downtown called Brown Bear Bakery right over here. And I go a lot of times in the weekend. I'll pick stuff up there. And I was walking down the street, And like on this, I heard some guy from a window yell, "Hey, Emilio!" And he was like, "Oh yeah," just screaming up. And I looked over and I'm like, "There he is! I told him he was around here." So he is down here locally. So we'll need to put that. I think that's actually something we could help facilitate because my daughter works on films in town, and he's connected with Film Cincinnati.
Yeah.
So we'll put you in touch with Film Cincinnati. I'm sure they can put you in touch with him,
that.
and let's get him in a play over the Playhouse.
Right. I would love.
I love
you
it.
know, and like I'd be like, Emilio, what play do you want to do?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
What would interest you? What can we build around like his interests? I think it'd be so cool.
You know what he really wants to do? Your musical.
Yeah, I don't think there's a role for him in Bring It On.
Like
Come
a
on now, we'll have to do a little
It'd be like a
adaptation.
principal.
We could,
Oh yeah, the assistant principal.
there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. That one actor that you don't know where to put.
Right, he was in Breakfast Club, and now he would play the teacher.
Right.
Minding the hall pass. So we'll adapt a role like that for him.
Yeah.
he's grown up.
No, I bet there's some play that he'd be interested
I'm sure
in.
there is.
Oh, yeah.
Wouldn't that be?
Yeah,
I just think it would be super fun.
That's going to be on our vision board. We're going to put that together
Yeah.
for you. We're going to make that happen.
Okay.
I love this. We're going to go to a sporting event.
Yes.
And
Yes.
we're going to get Emilio Estevez in a play.
At the
all
Playhouse.
happening.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
We got it all sorted out.
This is,
Tell you what, very quickly, if
Yeah.
kids were interested in getting involved in theater,
yes.
getting involved at the Playhouse in the Park, young people,
Yes.
no involvement at the moment, what do they do?
This is a great question. So
I'm sorry, young people.
young
forgive
people,
me.
if young people want to get involved in theater, and we have lots of different inroads for that. We have classes throughout the year, and we have classes both at schools and at the Playhouse. And we have this amazing summer camp that actually they're setting up for now. Once we close the last show of the season, it's like they start setting up the whole building to be full of summer camp for the rest of the summer.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, we've got great summer camp programs. Our education director, Ariana Moses, is doing such great work. Like, I think what they're doing that is so brilliant right now is that they're choosing material that kids are really into and excited about, like Wicked, but making sure that like what they're getting when they come and work on Wicked is like some real training,
Right.
Some
Yeah.
real skills both for life and theater. And I just think that they're doing a great job. Our education program, we have so many different kinds of things that we do. We also have touring shows that go to schools, and our after school programs, and yeah, there's a lot. So I would invite people to check out our website and see what we have, and
That's
give us a call.
CincyPlay.org. Is that right?
Yeah, CincyPlay.com actually.
.com, okay.
CincyPlay.com, and anybody on our education staff, they're all like the nicest people, and they love what they do. And even if you just called and you were like, I just want to talk to somebody because I think my kid might like theater, we will talk to you. And we have auditions every year for kids under 14 to be in A Christmas Carol. They age out every year. Like that is the part of the cast that rotates the most.
Right.
And we need some Cratchits every year, and a Turkey Boy, and young Ebenezer and young Ebenezer's sister Fan, and so that's also if you're down for your kids being backstage with a bunch of adults who are going to crack jokes all the time. It changed my life. It was the best thing ever.
We're all products
Wait
of
a
the
minute.
arts
Yeah.
education here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Were you
playing
just
Belinda
thinking of a
Cratchit.
specific joke, by the way? Was that what I just witnessed?
I
Okay.
wasn't thinking of a specific joke.
Okay.
I was just
in
thinking
the
about
90s too, it was a lot more whatever. Right?
Back
Yes,
when I was
Yes, right.
back in 1984 when I did my first play. I don't remember what was going on. I just remember like I got to like hang out with adults and
Yeah.
older kids and like put on fun clothes and like stand in the dark and I don't know. It was cool. It was cool. So there's always opportunities like that too.
Well, that's great.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thanks so much for coming
Yes,
in and
Yeah.
talking to us. We
Super
really
fun.
appreciate that.
No, I'm really, really, really grateful that you invited me.
Yeah,
on.
well,
This
thanks
is super
for
fun.
Thanks for
coming. This is
coming.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll all be up there at the Emilio Estevez opening at the play. So it'll work out
Fantastic.
good. All right.
The NattyCast is proudly brought to you by Pago Lago Productions. The show is hosted by Tim Barker, Rex Stull, and Ron Thomas. Produced and edited by Matthew Lake and associate produced by Ethan Spanja. Special thanks to Sadie Kern at Pop Gun Flow for the graphics and to Brando Triantafilou for the original theme song. feel free to follow us at _NattyCast on Instagram or head to our website, thenattycast.com. You can get this show wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll see you next time.